Sharing my screen. Okay, now I'm recording. And as I said, the exam is going to be on Thursday, and we're going to have an hour and a half. And I don't mind if you need guys need more time than that. But the exam itself, let me just go and share my screen. Okay, now this. So let's go back to the modules. Where did I put the guide? Here's the guide. Okay. So as I said, the exam is going to cover the first chapter 3 and 5 and 4 and 5 and 6. The exam is going to be two parts. One of them is going to be true and false questions worth 25 points. And then there will be a programming question worth 25 points. The programming question simply is just going to include the last chapters 6 and 7 are not included. I mean, 7 is not included, but 6 is not included in the programming section. So it's just going to be 3 and 4. But for the true and false, it's simply going to include 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. What I'm going to be doing today, I'm simply going to go through some points just to give you some like heads up points about the midterm exam, the multiple choice, the true and false section. And then after that, I am going to, I already posted a question that the exam is going to be very similar to it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to answer that question in the classroom, in the class today. And you can use that as a guide to answer the question that we're going to be dealing with in the exam. So let's start with the true and false. Again, if you want to put those on notes, write them. It will help you studying. There will be questions about comments in Java, the type of comments that we have. We mainly have 3 different types of comments. There will be a question about the formatting of your code and the white spaces and the block lines. Why are these important? There will be some questions about variables and data types and identifiers. There will be some questions about the operators.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are you reading off a list of something we can access, or should we be writing these things
Oh,
down?
I just wrote the list, like just headlines for myself.
Okay.
Again, this is going to be recorded, so you can actually. Yeah, it's an open book. Okay, so
Well, if it's open book, then because my textbook is on the computer, so if
You
it's
can
open
use
book, then I can't really access it with the lockdown browser
you can
enabled.
use it. It's a time management exam mostly, so
No, I'm saying like because I have if it's in lockdown browser, I can't access the textbook.
no, don't worry about it then.
Okay.
There will be some questions about operators. Now, we talked about arithmetic operators, assignment operators, rational operators, logical operators. There will be questions about floating division and integer division. You have to pay attention to that part. There will be some statements, like generic statements, that might get you confused. So what I'm just going to suggest here is when you answer the questions, just make sure that you read it very, very clear and make sure that you don't get confused with them. Okay, so let's move on. There will be some questions about the if statement and if else statement. Sometimes some questions you will be given some expressions, and you're going to be asked to be you're going to be given the evaluation, and you're going to be asked if this evaluation is true and false. And there's one part that I wanted to actually talk about here. In Java, we have 2 different types of switch statements. And since we kind of talked about them in the class time, but I'm just going to go and explain them to you a little bit more. So let me just go, because when I looked at it, I was like, this is something that I need to talk about in the classroom. So let me just go ahead and share my screen with you guys. So let me jump. I'm just going to use it here in this main function here. So let me go all the way to the bottom. Okay. So I'm going to show you there. We have two types of switch statements. One of them is called the switch statement. The other one's called switch expression. Okay. So just to give you an idea what's the difference between them, let me start with the switch statements. If I start, for example, x equal 1, and x is supposed to be an integer, but I think I already have integer here, okay? If I come here and say switch, and I put x, and I start listing the cases, let's go with two cases. Case 1, and I'll just say system dot out dot print print line, and let's just put 1, just print test 1, semicolon, and a break, and we have another type. We can go with case 2, and then let me just copy this. I'm just going through the syntax here, test 2. And then after that, we have something called the default case. And I'll just go with test 3. So this is simply the regular switch statements that we already know and we learned about. Now there's another way we can use switch statements, and it's basically called using a switch expression. Now in a switch expression, what I'm going to do, I'm going to come here and create, let's say, a string, and this string is going to call, for example, str, and look what's going to str equal. It's going to equal switch. And when I'm going to come here, I'm going to put x. And I'm going to open a curly brace. And I'm going to say case 1. And look what I'm going to do. Arrow. And I'll say test 1. Semicolon. Case 2. Arrow. Test 2. And then we have the default. And we have an arrow. And we'll call this one test 3 and semicolon here. And we go and let's see if and you put a semicolon, of course, at the end. So this is, again, whatever I'm highlighting right now is called a switch statement. And this here is what we call a switch expression. As you can see here, I got an expression where the left side is me creating a string, and the right side is having a switch block. And then depending on what's the value of x, the value of str is going to be defined. For example, since x is actually 1, so str is simply going to hold the value of test 1. That's actually something that's available and does exist. We didn't have a chance to talk about it. So here it is. There will be a question about this. So I decided to talk about it right now. So here it is. This is a switch state expression, and this is a switch statement. Okay, so let me go back to the questions. There will be some questions about infinite loops. There will be questions about loops in general, the while loop, the for loop, the do while loop, and for each one of them, what would be the perfect case? There will be a question about APIs. What is API and what does it mean? There will be some questions about the method headers, like what is the components of a method header? Usually We studied that in the example of the book. We said method headers are simply, first of all, you have the specifier, is it public, is it private? And then after that, we have a return data type, and then we have the name of the method. And then finally, we have parameters if they do exist. There's something called wrapper class. In wrapper class, we had a chance to talk about them before. And the idea of wrapper class, just to tell you what's a wrapper class, we know that we have primitive data types like integer x1, for example, equal 100. Now, we know how Java handle primitive data types and how Java handle non-primitive types. Sometimes you really wish if you can handle a primitive data types as a non-primitive data types. And whenever you find yourself in that position, you simply have to create a wrapper class for that, which simply, again, is simply the process of converting the primitive data type into an object. For example, if I want to create a wrapper for an integer, all I have to do is just create a class, and inside the class, I define a data type, a private data type as an integer, and then I create methods that I will need to deal to process that integer inside that class, and that's what we mean by a wrapper. So I would highly recommend to do a little bit of test and search about what is a wrapper class. But again, the idea of wrapper class is simply when you have a primitive data type and you want to treat it as a non-primitive data type, you create a wrapper class for it. Now, you may ask the question, why would I want to do that? Well, one of the reasons why we want to actually create a wrapper class is the fact that when we send a primitive data type to a method, and I showed you that last week, is that we're sending a copy of it. So any modification that will be applied to that variable in the method would not be reflected on the original value. But if you convert that primitive data type to a non-primitive data type using a wrapper, then any modification that will be applied to it, it will be reflected on the original object. There's a question that I will, let me just explain it here. Let's say we have two strings. String name 1 equal new string, and we'll just have it as Adam. Control C and Control V, and let's create another string name 2. Now, because we're using the keyword new, we know that inside the memory, there will be 2 Adams memory spaces. Now, when we compare name 1 with name 2, we said we're not going to use double equal because double equal simply is going to compare, is going to check if they're both referencing the same spot inside the memory. So if we want to compare them, we said we're going to use name 1 dot equals, and we put here name 2. Now, the question that you are simply going to be asked in the midterm exam, what is the mechanism of the comparison here? Okay, how would the computer actually compare them? Now, we have another method actually called name, let's call it here, name 1, compare. I think it's compare 2, and then name 2, semicolon. Let's see here. Change, yep, here it is. Compare to. So there's a difference between equals and compare to. Equals was going to check if those 2 strings are exactly the same. Compare to is going to compare them, but it may return a 0 or a positive value or a negative value. That's what's going to be returned using the compare to method. Now, beside that, that's not my big deal, but the question is, how exactly Java handle a comparison between 2 strings? Well, we have 2 different methods in programming in general. Java simply use what we call alphabetical ordering. Sorry, no, not alphabetical ordering. Java use another technique. Let me just explain what is alphabetical ordering. Alphabetical ordering simply means it's going to compare the characters one by one. And despite if it's an uppercase or lowercase, that's not a big deal when it comes with the alphabetic ordering, as long as the alphabetic order is taken under consideration. Okay, so Adam, if you put it with a lowercase a or an uppercase a, if you're using an alphabetical ordering, then it's going to be the same.
You're saying dot equals does that?
No, that's the dot compare. And also dot equal. Let's just put it that way. Yes, both of them. The biggest difference between dot equals dot compare, dot equals return a true and false. Dot compare is going to return 0 or positive or negative. 0 simply means they're exactly the same. Positive or negative simply means they're not the same. Okay, I'm going to explain in a second, but for now, let me just explain what's the alphabetical, so I can go to what Java actually used. Alphabetical simply is going to compare each character with the corresponding character, and if they are the same, then you get a 0. You move to the second one, to the third one, until you get to the end of it. If they are exactly the same characters, despite if it's an uppercase or lowercase, you get a 0. For example, let's just say I have a B here. If I compare name 1 with name 2, I will get positive 1. Why? Because B comes after A. Wait a minute, no, I'm going to get negative 1. Because B comes after A. So it's like you're subtracting the alphabetic order of A from the alphabetic order of B. Okay, so let me just put it in a different way. If I put A here, if I put F here, that will make it negative 2. If I put this as D and I keep this as F, that will make it positive 2. So this is how it's compared. And the moment that a character is found that is different, it's not going to continue comparing, and it's just going to give you the difference between the character that they were found. They're not the same. Now, just remember here, this, whatever I'm saying here, in case we're using the alphabetical ordering. Now, Java doesn't use alphabetical order. Java use something called, and let me try to pronounce it because it's a very, very long word, lexicographical. Lexico graphical order. So what's a lexicographical order? Lexicographical order is simply going to take each character and convert it to the ASCII code value for it, and then compare the characters based on those integer values. They're not integer values. Let me just put it the ASCII code value. So that simply means if you have an uppercase D and A and lowercase a, they're not going to be treated as the same. And that's what Java is using. So there will be a question asking you about the difference between those two ordering, which one of them Java is using. And here it is. I'm giving you the answer for that. And the reason I'm doing that because we didn't have a chance to talk about it in the classroom. So I felt that I need to explain it to you guys. There will be a question that is a little bit tricky. Okay. And I want you to pay attention to those questions because he will give you a statement like system.out.print line, and he will give you something that is not understandable, for example, in the middle here, to bring your attention to a mistake in this statement here. And that's problem is the lowercase s that we have here. This has to be uppercase s. So there will be some questions again. You will have some statements, and those statements again, a character is a little bit different. And then if you don't pay attention to the syntax, those type of questions may slip and you don't pay attention to it. There will be some questions about the features of object-oriented programming, which we covered in the class. There will be a question about static and non-static members, and we talked about that before. There will be a question about the return statements. Okay, and I'm going to just give you an idea here. Can we have a return statement that doesn't have a value? Like just a return without returning anything? I'll tell you something here. Some programming language will accept that. So I want you to go and dig and see if Java is one of those programming languages. There will be some questions about the setters and the getters. And here's something I want you to pay attention to this. Setters and getters, they have different terms and different names. So the question may ask you a question about setters and getters using different terms and different terminology. So do yourself a favor and go and learn about all the terminology that's related to it. And this is it. This is the multiple choice Sorry, this is the true and false questions. Now, before I continue, is there any questions?
Where should we go study on these things?
What should you go study on those things?
Like for setters and getters and stuff.
Oh, I'll tell you
Like,
something here. This is something that everybody here needs to take advantage of. AI these days are the best tools available for everybody. I recommend whatever you study, not only for this class, for any class, keep it open. And every time any questions pop in your head, this is how we use. Let me just go a little bit in time. Before the internet and before we have computers and access to the internet, our only choice and option to find answers for any question is books. And that takes a long time. Now, ever since we have internet, now we go and ask Google for everything. Google will not give you straight answers. Google will give you a lot of articles, and you have to go through all these articles to find an answer that you're looking for. But now you have a perfect assistant that's sitting next to you. Whatever question you have, just pop that question and read it and learn from it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let me move on and talk about the programming question that you guys are going to be dealing with, because this one is going to be, I'm not going to say it's a tough one, but you need to work. Let's just go and say that. Let me share my screen. Where am I? Okay. Where did I put it? I put it in models. If you go to test one sample, here's the question. I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to move to Eclipse. Let's put it at the top. Control V. And here's the question. Let me format it a little bit, so we will be able to see the whole thing. Okay, so here we go. Let's start reading the question. What do we have here? We are asked to create a program to calculate the monthly loan payment for a given principal amount and interest rate and long term. From this statement, I can tell that there will be a principal amount variable, there will be an interest rate variable, and there will be a long term variable. The program should consider both fixed and variable interest rates. So we got two situations here. Write a Java program that accomplish the following. You can ask the user to enter the principal amount. You can ask the user to enter the following interest rates. So there will be two interest rates. One of them is fixed, and the other one is variable. Okay, so the user is going to choose if you want to go with a fixed or if the user want to go with a variable. If the user select a fixed interest rate, you're going to calculate the money payment. And if the user used the following formula, well, this formula is simply going to be used for both of them. Let me just put it that way, whether it was fixed or variable. But let me just explain the variable interest rates. As you can see here, start with 4%, and then 1 year later is going to be 5, and then the next year is going to be 6, and so 7, and so on. So that's how the variable interest rate is going to change. This is the formula that we're going to use to calculate the monthly payment. And I'm showing you that there will be a P for the principal, R for the monthly interest rate, and N for the total number of months. That's the error. Now, one thing that I think I forgot to mention here is that in addition to ask for the principal, ask for the rate, you need to ask for the term of the loan, how long you're going to be taking that loan. So that's a third entry that you have to ask the user. Now we have the equation. We need to know the variables. And then after that, we have to, the user have to select if the user select the variable, prompt the user to enter the number of years. This is not 100% accurate. Whether the user is entering a fixed or a variable length, you have to prompt the user to enter the long term. So I'm just going to cut it from here. And I'm going to come here and put it here. So we're asking the user to enter the principal, the term, and the rates. And based on those choices, the user simply will use this formula to do the calculation. So whether it's a fixed or variable rate, you're going to calculate the monthly amount payment using the formula below. Put it here. Using the formula, calculate the monthly payments for a fixed. No, not that. It's not for formula. Yes. Okay. And let me just fix the question before I start answering the question. If this then variable rent taken into account, changing interest rates. Okay, that's all. You have to display the monthly rate amount. Ensure that your program handles user input validation. Now, for the user input validation, since we're going to ask the user to enter 3 values, I really don't want you to go with 3 of them. Pick one of them. And I'm going to explain that when we do the exam, by the way. So instead of going with 3 input validation, simply just going to make your program a little bit longer. Just stick with one of them. In my case, I'm going to go with prompting the user to use a fixed rate or the variable rate. So let's go. Yes.
Something like this is gonna be on the exam. Is that what you're saying?
Very similar to what you see here.
Okay. So it'll include like input validation, everything like that?
Yes. And I'm going to
Okay.
ask you again in the question itself, I'm going to tell you that since I have 3 inputs, I want you to just demonstrate.
Oh, okay. I get it. I get it.
Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and start the question. What I'm going to do, I'm simply going to start by creating a scanner. That is something that we need. So system.in. And remember here, you need to import the scanner. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go directly at the bottom here and close the scanner. So user input dot close. Semicolon.
Okay, just really quickly, I wanted to ask for a refresher.
Uh-huh.
How do you clear the buffer again for the scanner?
How do I clear the buffer?
Yeah, so if you do next, I think it's just like user input dot
Oh, how to
next.
clear the buffer?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Usually we will have that issue when you mix reading strings with numerical variables. Okay, so to clear the buffer, what you need to do, and I don't remember exactly if it's reading an integer followed by a string or reading a string followed by an integer, but it's one of those 2 cases. All you have to do is to have one line where you type the scanner dot next, and I think it's dot next line. It's either next or next line. This will clear the buffer. So what my suggestion here is that if you're mixing between strings and what they call them, between strings and integers or doubles, double check your program and make it run multiple times. And if you find out that it's skipping one of the inputs, you should know that this is the part where you need to put a clear for the buffer, and it's one of those 2. It's either next or next line.
Okay.
Okay. So here you go. We start with creating the scanner. Now we need to know our variables. from a look at the program, I know that I will have those variables: principal, interest rate, loan, term. And I'm going to add a little bit more variables to it. So let me just come here and put it as in a comment. In addition to those, I need to put a variable for the monthly payment. After all, that's my whole goal, is to show the monthly payment. Also, I need to take the user choice. Remember here, we have interest rates. We're going to have two types of interest rates. One of them could be fixed. One of them could be variable. Okay, so we're going to ask the user to choose one of those. So I will just say here, user rate choice. Okay, this is where I'm going to ask the user to enter the choice, and I'm going to enter the payment. And I'm going to also create a variable for the months, because I'm going to ask the user for how many years, and I'm going to have to convert those years into months in calculations. Of course, you can go with months and ask the user to enter months, but usually whenever you go, and to make it easier, let's go with years. Okay, so here we go. Principal amount, those are the variables. Let's go ahead and start creating them. For the principal amount, I'm going to go with a double. And I'm just going to copy it. So that's my double. Let's see if I have another double. Interest rate. That could be a double. Now, what else double? Monthly payment. That could be a double. User choice, that's an integer. Months, that's an integer. So we got those three doubles. And now we're going to have integers. And we said months, that's going to be an integer. We have user choice. That's an integer. And finally, the loan term, that's also an integer. And it will be a good idea if we actually set them all to 0 at the beginning. Same thing here, set it to 0. Set this to 0 and set this to 0. Now that I have all my variables created that I need for this program, I can take this one away. I can move on to the process of asking the user for the inputs. Now we're going to ask the user to enter the principal, the interest rate, and the user choice, and the long term. So how do we do that? Again, always you have to ask the user with a prompt and print. And I'm going to go here and say, enter the loan term. Semicolon. Now we're going to ask the user to enter the loan term here. And the loan term is simply going to equal user input dot next and integer. After that, we're gonna, let me copy this. Or we could at the bottom. And for the choice, I will show a message on the screen. Enter the rate, enter the rate type. Okay, and for the rate type, I'm gonna use a choice. And I'll put it here. Now, it's a good idea to come here at the top, .out.print line, and show the choices to the user, which is those two choices. So I'm going to have here 3 in print messages. Let's just go here. 3 print lines. Let's start with the first one. Copy this as it is. Show it on the screen. Row V. Oops. Let me just put the double quotation. And let's put a double quotation here as well for the second choice. And here I'm going to put a message. Available rates. You see 1 and 2, enter the rate type you want. And then you ask the user. Now, this is supposed to be the last step. And this is again where we are actually going to have to do the user validation. So I'm going to keep that on the side. Let's continue with the other ones. Long-term user months. That's going to be calculated based on the term. So we need to get the principal entered. Please enter the principal amount. For the principal amount. And now the principal amount is double. So let's go ahead and put double here. Next double with the uppercase D. Okay, so now we got the loan, the principal, the interest rate. What else do I need? 3 inputs, right? The principal amount, the number of years, and the term. Okay, so I got all my inputs. Remember here, we need to calculate the months and we need to calculate the monthly payment. That's what we're going to be doing. Now, before we do that, let's go and talk about this here. I'm going to go with the do. And I'm going to go, let's go this all tap. And I'll use a while statement here. And I put semicolon. So I'm going to ask the user to enter the rate. Now, for this to continue, to go back here, that simply means the user needs to make a mistake. Now, I'm not going to go and you don't have to worry about if the user entered a string or entered a character. I don't want you to have to worry about that. This is something we're going to cover later. It's called exception handling. For now, I just want to make sure that the user is going to pick 2 or pick 1. So here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say user choice.
Wait, did you say don't worry about if they put in a string?
Take under consideration that the user will not make such a mistake.
Okay.
Yes, because if we want to go that route, we need to have what we call exception handling, and that's a topic that we haven't covered yet.
Could we use like user input dot next or next line and then just
convert
compare
it?
that?
Yeah,
compared to
you
like
can
the
do that.
string one.
That's a possibility, but I'll tell you, this is just going to make the program a little bit longer, and you may not have time for all that.
Okay.
So let's go ahead here. If the user choice, let's just copy this. When should I go? If the user choice doesn't, let's say if the user choice, I want it to repeat if the user chose something that's not 1 and not 2.
Could you do user rate choice? Well, it would be.
I would say, look what I'm going to say. Equal 1 or user choice equal 2. This is actually when I want to leave, right? If he made this choice or this choice, that simply means we need to leave the loop, right? Look what I'm going to do. I'm going to come here, surround the whole thing with a not. So if the user didn't make this choice or this choice, repeat. Let's just put it this way. If the user decides to go with 1, that will make this whole thing true. And this is going to convert it to false, and you leave. If the user go with 2, that will make this whole thing true. So it will be converted to false, and you leave. Remember here, while will repeat as long as this condition is true. So if you go ahead and choose a value that's, say, 3, so this is going to be false, and this is going to be false. So the whole thing is going to be true, and you're going to repeat the whole thing. There's many, many different ways to do this, but this is one of the ways that we can do. If the user didn't make this choice or this choice, repeat. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is actually a case where not could be in a good use. Because logically, this is what you want. If the user didn't make any of these 2 choices, you want him to repeat. And that's why I have the not that you see here. Okay, now that I'm done with my input validation, now I can move on with my process. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to come here and say if user choice equal 1. If the user made the choice of 1, I'm simply going to be doing something here. Else, I'm going to be doing something else. And I want you to pay attention to this because this is very, very important. Since I'm using the input validation here, that simply means I'm not going to leave this while loop unless the user made a choice of 1 or 2. So I'm making a choice here. If the user chose 1, I'm going to be doing something. If the user didn't choose 1, that simply means the other choice is left is 2. Now remember here, this part is for the fixed rate. And this one is for the variable rate. Let's start with the fixed rate, which is easier. Number 1, months equal loan term multiplied by 12. That way I know how
We're not
many months.
using
Huh?
we're not using methods on this.
Not necessary.
Okay.
If you want to use methods, go for it. What else? So months equal loan term. That's what we need. Let me just go back to the equation itself. We have the rate. We need to calculate the rate. Now, the rate is very important to understand that the rate that you're going to enter, it's the annual rate. So you need to update the rate to be able to use it in the equation as following. Oh, wait a minute. We didn't actually assign anything to the rate. We have just the choice. Now we're going to have to assign value to the rate. Since we're talking about the fixed rate, it's simply going to equal 5 divided by 100, and the whole thing is divided by 12. Now, this is, again, the equation that he gave me here. Where is it? Here. This is how you calculate the rate. The annual rate, which is 5. Now, this is considered integer division, so I'll just go ahead and put 0.0. Now, if you have a time, put an explanation about where this calculation is coming from. Again, the interest rate is the actual annual rate. And again, it will be much better if we have a variable for each one of those. So this is going to be the annual rate divided by 100. So you will get the percentage, the real actual value, multiplied by 12, which represent the number of months in a year. So an explanation here about where these numbers are coming from could be very helpful. So that's the interest rate that we're going to use. Now, all what's left here is to do the calculation using the monthly payment. So the monthly payment, let me copy it. I'm going to put it here, is going to equal. Now, before I do the calculations, let me just copy the equation itself. So it's going to be near me so I can have a look at it. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. This is where it gets a little bit complicated. We have 2 terms that are divided by each other. Okay, we have the left term here and the right term. It's up to you to start with whatever you want. Let me go with the right term here. What do we have? We have 1 plus r all the way to the power of n minus 1. So it's going to be one term minus 1. I'm going to be using a lot of parentheses. Now let's talk about this term by itself. This is 1 plus r all to the power of n. And n is the number of months. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go math dot POW, and we're going to put here 2 parentheses. One of them is going to be 1 plus months, and the other one, the other parameter is going to be, no, sorry, 1 plus rates, interest rate. And the other one here is months. Okay, and now I'm done with this part. You see this expression that I highlighted? This is the equivalent of it. Let's go to the first part. What do we have here? We have 2 parts multiplied by each other. So let's go ahead and put that. Well, the first part, since it's just the principal, so let me just go ahead and copy that. Where is it? Principal amount. Here it is. So it's going to be the principal multiplied by something. We're going to put that something between parentheses. Now, this parentheses are 2 parts multiplied by each other. We're going to have the rate, the interest rate, multiplied by something between parentheses. So we can go ahead and put between parentheses. And this term is very similar to this term. So I'm just going to copy it as it is. And I'll put it here. And it looks like I got it correct with no errors. Okay. It looks like it's complicated and it's long, but this is me interpreting what you see here. If you like, you can break it down into 2 terms and make it easier for you, but this is basically how it's done. If the user made one choice, we could come here and say system.out.print line. Oh, printf. Let's go with the printf. Sorry, this is printf. Printf, what I'm going to show here, I will say for percentage of D months. Again, that's the number of months. Your monthly payment is percentage D, oh, sorry, F. And I'm going to come here and put 0.2 or 2. Yes, let's make it 2. And in this area here, I'm going to have months. And I'm going to have monthly payment. At this point, it's a good idea to give this a try. So I'm going to run it. And here, enter the long term. I'm going to go with 5 years. Enter the principal. I'll go, for example, 6,000. Which rate you want to go? Again, we covered the first one, so I'm going to go with 1. And we have an error. Let's see, where is that? Cancel. He's complaining about this part here, the F, I believe. Where's the line? Okay, let's see. Why is he complaining about this? \n. He doesn't like the 0. Let's see here. Well, until I'm seeing format exception. Monthly payment. Let's try it again. Again, 5 years, 6,000. Fixed rate. Oh, now it worked. Okay, so I guess that 0 was causing that error. And look at this. You have to pay $11. Let's see if that calculation is actually correct. Because again, I took, oh, $600. Of course, $600. Let's see. For 11.32 multiplied by 60, yeah, you're going to end up paying $680. So yeah, that makes sense. So I got the first one covered. Now the second one is going to be a little bit complicated for a simple reason. I'm still going to need to do the calculation for the month. So it makes more sense if I do the calculation for the month here outside, because it's the same number of months is going to be used for each one of them. Okay, no, actually, let me just undo that. Let's talk about the variable rate. For the variable rate, we know that the rate is going to be increased by 1 every year. Okay, so let's say the user entered 5 years. So we're going to have to calculate 5 payments. I hope this part is clear. If the user entered 5 years long term, then there will be 5 years, 5 payments need to be printed for each year. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go with a simple for loop. Integer I equals 0. As long as I is less than loan term, not equal, just less, and then I plus plus. So I is going to hold the value of 0 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, let's come here and start with, let's go and see how we calculate the loan term. The loan term simply, I need to have a new variable here, because what I'm thinking about is that the interest rate, sorry, I want to start with 4. And then I'm going to increase it by 5. And when I increase it by 5, I want to see the effect of dividing it by 100 and dividing by 12. So I'm going to come here and create a double, and I'll call it rate per year. Set that to 0. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. And also, I'm going to come here and start by the interest rate and set it to 4. Because that's what it says at the top here. It's going to start with 4 and it's going to increase. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and put the interest year is going to be plus equal I. First of all, it's going to be increased by 0. So it's going to be 4. Second year is going to be increased by 1. It's going to be 5. The year after that is going to be 6 and 7 and so on. After that, I'm going to calculate the rate per year.
I have a question.
Yes.
The loan term is the number of years, right?
Yes.
So if I is less than loan term, will it include the last year?
What is that?
If I is less than loan term instead of less than.
Oh, yeah, because I didn't use the equal, right?
Yeah.
Here's the deal. Just imagine the loan term is 5.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm using starting from 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you count them, you'll find yourself having 5 years.
Okay.
Okay. But here's the thing. The only reason why I'm doing this, because I'm starting with 4, I want to increase it first by 0.
Okay.
So
okay.
I'll keep it 0 and so on.
Yeah.
So this is going to be, I'm going to take whatever the interest rate that I have, copy that, and I have to divide it by 100, and the whole thing is going to be divided by 12. Semicolon. So now I was able to calculate the rate per year that I'm going to be using in my equation. Now, let's go back to the equation here. This is the monthly payment. Now, for the monthly payment, let's just think about it here. The number of months that I am going to use is simply, yes, it's the same that we have here. Take this one away. So I can cut this from here and actually put it here, because we're going to be using this months again here or here. So now I have the rate calculated. All I have to do the monthly payment rates. Let me just copy this and go down here. But I have to change something. Now, the principle is going to be the same. The difference that we're going to have here is the interest rates. So we're going to just have to replace all these interest rates with a new one, which is the rate per year, rate per year, rate per year. Okay. And now after that, this is a for loop that's going to go for amount of years. I'm going to show a message on the screen. Remember here, if you use a fixed rate, it's going to be the same rate every year. But when you use a variable rate every year, the monthly payment is going to change. So I need to come here and change that. So what I'm going to come here and it says for, and look at this. I'm going to change this for year number D. Your monthly payment is the monthly payment here. Now, instead of showing the number of months, I'm going to be showing the number of years. And remember here, I represent the years, but we're counting from 0. So I want to actually, instead of showing me year number 0, I want it to look like year number 1. So I'm going to increase it by 1. And that should fix the problem. Now, let's go ahead. There's no problem to be fixed. Let me just give it a run. Okay, I'm going to go with 5 years. I'm going to go with $6,000. And I'm going to go with the first one. Let's go with 1. And here it is. That's the amount of payment you pay every month. Let me go and choose the other one. So let's go with 5. We have $6,000. We're going to go with 2. And you can see here for 2, it's going to change. For year number 1, your monthly payment is going to be this one. For year number 2, this is the monthly payment. For year number 3, this is the payment. For year number 4, this is the payment. And this is the payment. Well, let me see here. Does this make sense? Because, yeah, I think it makes sense. Let me just do the calculation really, really fast. So we have 110 multiplied by 12 plus 113 multiplied by 12 plus 118 multiplied by 12. Oh, wait a minute. I made a mistake. 110 multiplied by 12 plus 113 multiplied by 12 plus 118 multiplied by 12 plus 127 multiplied by 12 plus 139 multiplied by 12 equal, well, I think I made a mistake because it's not showing the exact, showing me like the old interest is paid like $41. I'm really not a financial person. So I'm just guessing here that this equation is going to be acceptable for like for the whole amount. Let me just, maybe I made a mistake. Let me just redo it again. 101 multiplied by 12 equal plus 113 multiplied by 12 equal, okay, that makes sense, plus 118 multiplied by 12 equal plus 127 multiplied by 12 equal plus 139 multiplied by 12 equal. Now, I think this is acceptable. This is correct somehow. I'll take it. I'll accept it. And that's it. So this is it. I do have my 2 payments here, 2 if statements. One of them, the user chose a fixed rate. The other one, the user chose a variable rate. And for the variable rate, I'm just going to be calculating the payments with different rates every year. As the years pass, the rates are going to go high and high. And that's why you can see here that we started with 110, and then we moved all the way to 140 as years pass. And that's again the question. Now, the question that you're going to be asked in the midterm exam is not going to be as complicated as this one, but it's going to be very similar to this one. You're going to have a different situation where the user is going to be given two choices to go with choice number one, choice number two. Choice number one is going to be doing calculations. Choice number two is going to be doing different types of calculations, and so on. So let me stop sharing my screen. I am going to upload the video, and I'm going to upload the file itself so you guys can use it as a guide if you need to. That's simply what we are dealing with in the exam. And I am done for today. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was hoping you could look over the code that I sent you.
Okay, the one that you sent me, you just sent me the main method. You didn't send me the class itself.
I
But
thought I put the class like below it.
Let me just